Hello, my name is Aisha Williams, and I am going to do a final reflection on course R511 Instructional and Performance Technologies Foundations, led by instructor Dr. Mike Carlin. I took particular interest in understanding the readings and the concepts, theories, class conversations, as well as other assignments that pertain to how this field has changed over time, and as well as the historical development and foundations that has helped me conceptualize how I identify in the field, as well as other connecting concepts. Beginning in the early 1920s, we noted that classroom structures were using media forms of silent films and slideshow projections, and later transitioned to radio broadcasting, which was a form of audio-visual instruction. But then in World War II, there was the need for mass rapid training, and then there was discrepancies in the role of radio in providing quality forms of instruction, especially for a format like teaching someone how to train and how to physically use their bodies. You need forms of media that allow visual replications of what it is they're supposed to be doing. And this really kicked off the audio visual instruction movement, where there was focus on not only producing films and strips and forms of instruction, but as well as studies focusing on mass communication. Following this movement during World War II, the National Defense of Education's Act passed a surplus of funding that allowed schools and colleges to focus on means of film and educational TV programming to better their learning structures and learning goals. But again, we notice these issues in communication where audio-visual learning is useful in seeing things, but there is the form of lacking feedback, as well as this connection between film and radio and visual and audio. Mandela would describe this as weak points in learning, and understanding that the aspect of problem solving, as well as perspectives and understanding the role and capabilities of technology and communication and instruction, were really beginning to take off and develop in the means of programmed instruction, and forming this more structured and technological advanced. And I mean technological as in the media and tools being used to aid this form of learning, was another turning point of our field, where then moving into the 1960s, we really begin to have these radical behavior approaches and focuses on cognitivism, and other forms begin to stem out in theories where this approach to learning emphasizes multiple forms of tools, but how does instruction create different forms of structure depending on the role and capability of the media and technology, as well as the human communication and interaction that is required for the learning objectives or learning context. And we see again this shift where how are we figuring out what instruction, or how these technologies, or how are we creating these technologies in the means of all supporting learning. And this is where instructional design comes into play, and other shifts of instructional strategies for educational technologies, where I talk about strategies as in approaches and models and processes and means of systematic thought processes, where they're designing or taking a traditional learning concept, or maybe even a new concept, and figuring out how societal advances in technology can better this performance, or better this means of instructing or teaching, or any of those means of learning. And by the 1970s, we see that technology is very apparent, and to the point where there's a huge shift of focus to now we need to look at educational technology specifically. There's further research and development on how systematic approaches lead to new systems of design and development, and how computer systems are becoming more advanced, and we're coming into this programmed instruction era, um, where companies are not companies, but where researchers are figuring out theories and pedagogies to embed in software and developments, which we see into the 1980s. A huge shift is beginning to occur where we are entering a digital age, a digital means of learning, producing educational technologies where companies like Apple and Radio Shack begin to mass produce personal home computers, where now it is not only people who need training, people who specifically need instruction. It has become more of a commodity and a now household item that you learn and you grow with, just like you learn to use regular appliances within your home, and you begin to figure out little things that you didn't really know you were capable of doing with these devices that overall provide some form of improvement to your everyday processes, everyday learning, everyday development. And then we see again this innovative ability in the 1990s, where basically things took off because we have the World Wide Web and we have access to mass forms of learning and mass pools of information. And now there is this wide range of instruction. And I believe this was another turning point in our field, because not only do we have multiple platforms of learning and technology and design occurring, but there are multiple uses. It's no longer just one structured means of using technology to create better learning, or to it's more about performances and personal interest and means of technology and designing technology and instruction to help everyday life structures. And it's really amazing how we grow from one small focus area to now the almost limitless capabilities. And here we are nearly a century later than where we started. And we're kind of jumping back to the 1920s idea and just creating learning tools that improve processes that are now traditional concepts that were going on in the 1960s and 1970s. And when we're forming these tools for learning, it's now, how do we make these tools that were innovative a century ago more greater quality to our learning structures, and are they going to continue to grow in this same force? And I believe that was one really groundbreaking or an influential aspect to this course, is really understanding how we all learn over and over again that history not necessarily repeats itself, but it affects the current life and how we're going to advance. And jumping back into it, I believe there's still these ideas of how can we improve learning? How can we improve the process? Or how can instruction be designed? Or how can technology be designed with instructional aspects? And there's still these same questions, yet I don't think we are necessarily any step closer to answering these questions. The great thing that I'm learning is this is a process, and I've shared in my previous paper that I am now becoming more sure of myself, and the fact that I am unsure of myself. And this whole idea of the field of IST is a process of figuring out how our influences around us affect the path that we're taking. Particularly, I want to kind of reflect back to early in the semester when I first was introduced to the ADDIE model, and I kind of had this aha moment where I was entering this field looking for a pathway or a one structure that would guide me in the right direction of how to start this process every time. And there isn't one. There's not a process to follow, and there's just models and things to look at to help you understand the scope of the field that we're in and help you choose your own direction or follow bits and pieces of multiple paths and multiple theories and multiple understandings of what it means to learn and what it means to learn with instruction and through media and through designing the whole process of implementing them all together. Where this course has really taught me that the starting point of this field is really within the historical foundation, which is understanding where this field came from as well as where it's going and how theories and methods and models, though over centuries or over a century old, are still very true and still hold important information and concepts that help develop and understand underlying principles within the field of IT and design and computer systems that support, human performance and all these aspects of our field. And as well as understanding that our field isn't one thing or isn't one pathway, nor do all these pathways necessarily focus on the same thing, and nor do they have to. It's ultimately this idea of picking a sort of relative focus and utilizing all the information, all the resources, all the connections that our field is making to learning and technologies and designing and human performance and things of that nature that are going to really help me understand what I want to do and what my direction is. Where I'm still not completely sure, but at least I understand where it is that I can go, where it is that I can choose to pick my focus on. That's anything that has a sense of improving or can help the field in any way. And it makes me feel more comfortable in understanding that I might just stumble into a process that I really am passionate about and gives me my focus. And I use researchers and other information, maybe things that aspire out of what we have going on right now with COVID and all the new technological advancements and e-learning and all the new things that we are going to create within our field within this past year alone. It's honestly inspiring to know that there's still so much opportunity, and I don't think this opportunity will ever end. There's never going to be a period to our field. We're never going to, solve the answers of how do we create the best improvement, the best in performance or the best instruction, or there's not a best. It's just this steady process of improving. Improving is a thing that in some respects doesn't have to ever end. And I think that was what was the biggest takeaway from this field, is understanding how all these historical foundations has helped me really understand how learning can occur and be improved in different fields. And now I'm just kind of rambling, and as I wrap up this really great experience of being able to follow this process, as well as have this pool of information where I can go back and look into specific things that I want to focus on for my future research, as well as catch up on some things that I didn't take or didn't have enough time to really read and understand. I think it was a great opportunity to create these blog posts, just as well as a way for me to reflect and look back on short synopses of what did I have going on this week? What was my mind thinking of and following my own learning path? I do wish that I will continue these blogs or come back to them, especially my fellow students. I believe we created a really cool connection where commenting in these discussions and being able to talk to each other and creating this other form of media to interact was really interesting. And it's in some ways reading the same few people, you really got to understand how some of your fellow researchers are thinking and understanding the field. All in all, it has really been an amazing experience to have this foundational class, and I really look forward to seeing how to build upon it and to better my understanding of the field of IST and performance technologies. I want to say thank you, Dr. Carlin, for everything you've done. You have been an amazing instructor and really have gone above and beyond to make me feel connected without ever having seen you in person. Thank you for anyone else who is listening to this, and hopefully I have given you a informative reflection of what it was like to be in the course.